I don't think MIT needs advertising, but you must know that having spent a few years there in the 70s has really marked my life in a very, very strong sense. And what I'm telling you today is mostly coming from this incredible atmosphere which is called head and manus, the head and the hand, for having an institute where you do things in order, where you learn things in order to make them happen. And so just to answer to the question of Gabriele, I would say that today we can talk about 4 sectors where we can have major flow of innovation in the near future. One is life sciences, healthcare, and as you saw, there is a major impact of technology now in healthcare. Energy, they say, we are sure that we will have batteries which can be last for more than one day and make it possible to gather energy from the sun and then have it when there is no sun. And then we have solar cells which will have a high efficiency coming in. ICT, that is the whole field we heard already, something very important today, which covers the information and communication technology. And at the end, automation. Automation is an interesting field because it covers everything today. You find automation at every corner of your life. And we will see another little shot for the new form of automation, which is the drones. And there is some mystery around it. We'll see there is no mystery. Okay, so life science, energy, ICT, automation.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a few sectors in general, but which are the key words you would advise us to follow within to understand the trend of innovation today?
Okay, keywords is a very important fact in these things because then you are triggering attention to something. Why did I show you this? I showed you this because from here you get the feeling that there is not one technology per se, as it will see later, but there are innovations which are the melting of many technologies together. In this movie of the drone of today, you can see there are absolutely an incredible number of highly advanced technologies which up to 4 or 5 years ago were only used in the military sector, and now they've come to the civil sector. So this is the concept of innovation by integration of existing technology. You recognize the existing technology, the simple fact that this is a very easy to use 4-engine aircraft, which goes by itself, stabilizes by itself, and follows you, which means there is a recognition, there is a sensor which can tell you, and takes a shot of you wherever you go, and then comes back to you. I mean, so this is something which is incredible, was incredible 4 or 5 years ago in the civil world for about $400. So I had the initial of these drones, which was called Parrot, was made, not made by order by Apple. And I used it in the house, and this was going up, and there was a camera. And I had a lot of fun to have it going around. Then I saw my cat and went close to the cat. And then I saw the cat jumping, and he grabbed the thing and destroyed it right away. So it is totally not a military thing. It is totally not defended against the cat. But these guys are doing better. They're ready to be sold. And as a matter of fact, there are those which will be used in civil works to give a survey of the working site and all the rest. And it is becoming a very common thing, up to the point that the Federal Aviation Administration is thinking that they are interfering with regular aviation if we go too high. So there is the problem with the rules. And the rules, as we saw today for the cloud, are very, very important, absolutely necessary, but many times they interfere with the progress of innovation. But as we will see later in other sectors, we need rules, because technology can be very promising, but also very dangerous. So let me go out of the drone sector, where I think you all know the story of the drones in war, and so I don't want to go further on that. But I would like to give you some keyword of a very important sector, which is life science. The first 2 keywords which come today in my mind are immuno and brain. Immuno because there is a full new wave of genetically modified immuno-triggering system which are already in the advanced stage of clinical testing for curing many forms of cancer, really curing it. And so you find the line of people begging for being included in a clinical testing experiment which can hold 100 people, but where they have this clinical testing experiment, where they give you a chemotherapy which falls down your hair and all that, it's a very tragic but necessary situation. You find lines of thousands of people asking to be cured with immunotherapy. Immunotherapy is just teaching your T cells, which are the fighters against the agent of tumor, to kill the tumor itself. And they work. So in a few years, and some of you finance directors have sniffed the concept, because one of these companies, which is called Juno, it's a California company, has already raised 300 million without no product, and with only the prospect of clinical testing where you can check at least 3 or 4 kinds of tumors. And they expect a multiplication by 100, by 1,000 of their investment, because if it works in 2 years, this is what will happen. The second thing is brain. Brain was a great idea because it means something, I don't remember. It is the program launched by Obama 2 years ago about concentrating a lot of research centers on the brain concept, because we do not know anything about the brain. We know something which was known from an empirical way, but did not go into the system of the brain, which has to do with the information and communication technology in the brain. The funny thing is that this concept is going farther. This started with 100 million funding and has already reached a billion funding because of the aggregation of different institutions. It is not sure that it will work in understanding how the memory is created in the brain, how the circuits are working with another. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine, a mathematician in MIT, a Sicilian, Micali is his name, said, well, all bullshit. You don't study the brain like this. The brain is different. You have to study with the mathematical model and try to understand how different it works. So brain still is a concept which should trigger your attention, because brain is, if it works, the solution of all kinds of central nervous diseases which are terrible. I mean, the multiple sclerosis, the SLA, the lateral syndrome, amyotrophic lateral syndrome, or even Alzheimer's, or so on. And he said we need a new mathematical system of them all. So this gives you the idea that from the lab to the fab or to the clinical, there is still a long way to go. But the real thing, the real keyword you should remember is a very strange name. CRISPR, CRISPR. CRISPR. What is it, CRISPR? It started like 4 years ago. CRISPR is a technology which was invented in Harvard and in the Broad Institute, always in Boston, which allows you to change the DNA segment and insert in a place where you decide any new piece of segment at the cost of about $50 per change. Up to now, we had another system, which 10 years ago was the one called zinc fingers, which costed like $5,000 to change something with no sure effect. CRISPR is allowing to do this, and it is working to do this, with $50 a set. What does it do? It opens up the way to all kinds of utilization of DNA manipulation for anybody. And this is creating problems which we will discuss at the end. But to tell you how fast it was, the growth of CRISPR, and I really tell you, there will be a Nobel Prize in a few years for CRISPR, and so you will say, oh, Ovi told us. Yeah, okay, I told you. In 2013, we had a title in our magazine said, new genome editing method could make gene therapy more precise and effective. They just opened up the genome, a genome therapy, 2013. 2014, and this is from China, monkey modified with genome editing. So they started using it on monkeys. Of course, they were careful. I mean, if you modify a monkey, you can still stop the experiment if it doesn't go well. But in the same year, there was a discussion in Broad Institute and Harvard about the patenting of the revolutionary gene editing method. So you see that a year ago, they started discussing about the patenting. Then there was, at the beginning of 2015, this year in March, a scientific call for summit on gene editing, babies. What was that? The scientists got scared. So they started gathering together and say, shall we go ahead with this? Because if somebody starts making gene-edited baby, Hitler was a baby, I mean, compared to them. I mean, they can really change and make what I wrote in a little fiction science book about having people who had a certain level of intelligence, a certain color of hair, certain resistance to fear, and so on. And this is not yet acceptable. It's something which has to be ruled. Some people say you cannot rule science, but I leave it up to you. Would you like a system like this to be ruled or not ruled? And today, an American woman claims she is the first to undergo gene therapy to reverse aging. And the subtitle was, "Judge for yourself." I mean, if you can include in your gene something which reverse aging, which makes you younger than older, because there is a clock inside our DNA. If you reverse the clock, what does this mean? So I don't have it with me today because I just received it, but the fact is that there is an acceleration which is incredible in this field, a really great acceleration. So remember CRISPR. CRISPR will be the word to make you feel that the future is coming on us like an avalanche. That is the point. Other two words. I mean, the words is about energy. We already mentioned the life science, CRISPR, immune, brain. Energy, there are two words which you know. Renewables energy, wind, and so on, and they are still moving forward. Despite the price of oil going down, the researchers are still working because there are situations like Africa where these renewables already cost less than the energy produced with oil or gas at the today prices. And then there is the new nuclear. And this is a very interesting story because nuclear, I thought, was dead. After Fukushima, for me, nuclear was dead. We always said we cannot do any more nuclear in Italy because there is not the sufficient social control and culture, military culture, to really manage a real nuclear system. And then the disaster of Fukushima showed that even in the military-driven Japan, in the deep culture of quality of Japan, you can have a terrible accident made by mistakes and made by lies. Volkswagen lies compared to the Fukushima lies were babies. I mean, they lied so much in Fukushima that it is incredible. Then ICT. Well, ICT, I'm not going to spend too much time because today we heard already a lot about big data, about cloud. Only one word more, because big data, they concentrate a lot again on regulation, is that big data is an incredible source of knowledge if you have the right set of big computers. And this has the growth of big data, in a coincidence, there is the big sale of large computers, which before were dead. By the way, some of you knows that with instant trading, you are the major user of this kind of big data thing. I mean, because if you go to Red Bank, close in New Jersey, where they have the instant trading companies which deal with today, they say 25% of all the transactions in the United States, just to buy and sell stuff every millisecond, in order to make money. This has to do with big data analysis, that you have to go through, in this case it's financial data, but you can do the same with all the incredible number of data from Facebook, for Google, and so on, and create the possibility of fishing out profiles, trends, which didn't exist before. So in ICT, there is this concept of big data, which is going to be the most important, maybe effect in terms of technology use. Then there is another concept which is coming out of the need to supply communication to the developing world, which is called universal connectivity. In that same big event of Solve at MIT, there was one session chaired by Nicolas Negroponte, good friend of mine since long, long time. And he is explaining that we need to consider connectivity a universal right. And the solutions which are offered by Google with the balloons or by Facebook with the drones are just bringing connectivity to small areas in the world where you want to have a more connectivity than there is. But if you want to give connectivity to half of Africa or to half of Asia, you need something more universal. And so he's proposing this beautiful network of low-level satellites, low-altitude satellites, which move around and cover all the world. Because universal connectivity is the major result of a real form of fight to poverty and aid to developing countries, because you bring collectivity everywhere in the world. So these are the key words: big data, cloud, universal connectivity. Okay.
Is it possible for each one of these words to give some ranking in terms of social or economic impact?
Well, of course. I mean, ranking technology for the future is always a difficult issue. I went and looked for, preparing a little bit before coming here today, the same kind of framework, of scenario I had in 2013 and 2014, and they're all different from today. Every year you look at the future, and the future is changing. But this year I feel confident in saying that in healthcare, CRISPR is the name. Follow CRISPR, and this will be a revolution in all the gene editing therapies or changes more therapy. Because the woman who wants to include in her DNA something which is reversing aging is not a therapy. It's just I don't know how to name it, but it's a trick to nature. The second one in energy, for me, is the problem of storage. Because if we solve the problem of storing energy, electrical energy, for long enough, we really have definitely killed oil and gas in the next 10 years. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you know Tesla. Tesla is that car, electrical car built by Elon Musk in California, which has reversed completely the concept of electric cars. Because up to 5 years ago, everywhere we were going, the electric car was a small, ugly car, very small, who would be used inside cities to move without any impact from an environmental point of view to the city, and they never succeeded. I mean, you see some around, but they're ugly gadgets. And then, all at once, this visionary guy who made a lot of money with PayPal, he was one of the founders of PayPal, decided that the real electric car was a big, huge luxury car. So he built a beautiful car, completely electric, no hybrid, nothing like a Prius or so on. That car goes only electric. And if you drive it, you feel that it is something completely different. Big screen for all kind of command. And then an electric car has an acceleration from 0 to 1, which is incredible, and silent and comfortable. So he won. And they started buying Tesla instead of Mercedes and BMW, which was a big stress for Mercedes and BMW. But then he realized that the problem was the anxiety for the mileage. I say, when you have a 400 miles of autonomy, when you are 350, you start getting worried that you're not making it back home. So he created a network of all over the United States of superchargers, which allow you to charge the car for 80% of the battery, which is enough, it is like 250, 300 miles, in 20 minutes. And so if you put a nice restaurant close by, you eat, stop, and go and have another thing. And then he decided there was a problem of batteries, so he made a very smart, it looks like an Italian joke. He made a bid among different states to who would give him the biggest finance for building the largest ever battery factory in the world. So they made it in Arkansas. I mean, Arkansas, they made chicken before, and now they make batteries. And he made it, and now he's independent from the other Japanese or Chinese for the batteries. But not only that, he realized that the batteries, because he has another initiative, which is Solar City, a city which all goes by solar, could be very well used with much less technological stress to store energy in the house. Because, you know, when you store energy in a car, you need the storage to be light and the charging to be fast. In a house, you don't need it. You put it in the cellar. But no, he made very beautiful batteries in plastic with colors, which you can put in the car, in the house, and really be totally without any grid connection. This is moving forward. I mean, so he made a system for batteries, the car, and for the chargers. And if this concept of the batteries, which means of the supply of energy which can be stored, moves forward, it will be another big step toward a revolution in terms of solar power. The last one of my keywords, after storage of energy and after CRISPR, in the case of the ICT, is, I don't know if it is more big data or universal connection. If De Groponte has enough power to convince United Nations to make this as a United Nations agency to allow connectivity all over the world, then this will be the biggest. Universal connectivity, I would bet. Consider universal connectivity as the key word for this, okay?
Okay, so in listening what you said before, I mean, there are some concerns about the concept of the ethical aspect of few of these keywords that you have mentioned. How do you see this concept affecting a part of the framework you have described, ethical aspects?
We have already seen one, which is immediate to see. I'm waiting to see what the Vatican will say, if you can reverse the clock of aging. But you know, this is something I would leave to your reflection. The Vatican, which is still very important in Italy, is complaining if we come and do anything to an embryo. But it doesn't say anything if we go and do something to old people. And in fact, I don't know, from an ethical point of view, okay, doing anything to an embryo is surely something we have to care for. But if you take the life and you move it, as some scientists say, like this one who did this thing to the woman which we reported, you move the average life from 80 years to 120 years. It's an economic collapse of the welfare system. I mean, how do you handle? And besides, how do they live from 80 to 180? I mean, it's unless you really put the clock back and you can give them a badante 18 years old and they have fun, but it doesn't work that way. You stop and stay there. That is the concept. So the ethical is in bio a very important thing, and CRISPR will be center of important decisions on how to use it and where to use it. But I am afraid it will not be possible to limit the use worldwide. So you will, as you have today people going to Korea for stem cell transplant for some rare disease, you may have people who go to some Swiss clinic, if it is a lot of money, to use CRISPR to change something in their genetics or for the kids. And so this is going to be a big problem. The other big issue, which we saw today already, is in terms of the big data communication and the social media. We are gathering today such a huge amount of data that the personal history of people, although a little piece in the global average, can be used for all kinds of unexpected utilizations. So privacy is one thing, but also the power you put in the hand of people who can use the data of billions of data is something which can be worrying me. And the problem is that you impact in lobbying of this company, which is very sound, but you have to leave research free. Research must be free. You cannot stop progress. Another Galileo, no. Okay, that is the concept where I don't see any special reason to be afraid of any ethical issue in the energy field. Energy is a good commodity, and if we can get rid of what was the engine of our civilization, oil and gas, we do something, as it was said in the Soul, the little movie, very, very important for humanity, because we are dying out of dirty energy. So that is no problem in terms of ethical. But CRISPR and big cloud or cloud are problems from an ethical point of view.
Well, I think that you opened our mind as CFOs, or most CFOs, on aspects that we are not familiar with, but certainly these aspects will influence our way of working, our way of being, let's say, in the future. Where do you see, going toward something closer to our dimension? Startups, and something coming from the aspect that you just described.
You see, you may have seen that out of these keywords I said, the majority at the moment found a development in the United States. And found a development in the United States in a situation where Big companies have stopped doing basic research, but they created a group to sniff around in the universities and pick up the concept or the startups which have already gone into the work. And the role of startups is incredibly important for the development of innovation. The other big, let's say, the other big protagonist of the world, which is China, because they are really moving very strongly in the direction of using innovation through technology, it is weak in the freedom of people to do what they can find on their own, develop it and sell it. So I think there is but they are so strong in the political control of things that they've created some of the most important networks in the world, from Alibaba to Tencent and so on, Baidu. So the concept of finance is very important. In our world, it's more important because finance is necessary to start a new company, a new idea, to develop it, and the rate of success is maybe 1 out of 10 or something of this kind. And there is a huge difference between United States and Europe. But the biggest difference is in Europe, because in Europe we have an environment like UK, which is more or less in line with the American situation in terms of two things: the money to start and the money to exit. The money to start is mainly venture capital. The money to exit is either the IPO, which is always lower, or the merger and acquisition with larger companies. So from this point of view, UK is #1 in Europe. Germany is second, let's say, with a factor 60% of UK. Then there is France, which is 30%. Then there is Spain, which is 15%. Then there is Italy, which is lower than 1%. So this gives you the idea that we need something. And talking to the guys who follow it directly say, of course, we need more money at the beginning, and there are some good initiatives here, like the one of the strategic fund owned by the Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, where they try to gather together different venture capital to increase their impact on the growth. But what is totally missing is the exit. I mean, we see many examples of companies which grow here and exit in London or in Silicon Valley. Why? Because there is not at all this texture for M&A. We have the usual number of 100 companies for $1 billion each. They are not ready to do this. Big companies, Enel, Eni, I mean, they do their own funds, but then they start their own funds and never kill a company. I talked to a venture capitalist, say, my biggest problem is not to grow a good company, is to kill the bad ones. Because I invest in 10, I know one will be good, the one good grows, but I have to kill the other 9 as soon as possible because I waste money. So when you have what they call a corporate venture, killing a company is more difficult. I mean, I don't know what was the process for assigning to a certain group of inventors the money of investor, but there is a problem. So I think that this is, we will cover this in analyzing the Italian situation, but the Italian situation from the point of view of startups is, out of the 5, which has been analyzed by the European Commission, not by me, the situation is the worst one by far. Worse than Spain, worse than France, worse than Germany, and worse than UK, but that's okay. So move forward for helping startups, exiting.